could do.
Coming up from the blue holes of the Bahamian archipelago to St. Lucia's volcanic mountains, the Caribbean is home to diverse land and ocean ecosystems, and tens of millions of people visit every year for sea, sand and sun.
Está divino, de verdad que es una atracción, ¿verdad?
But the heat and humidity are becoming unbearable, and storms are ravaging islands which struggle to keep up with costly repairs.
C'est un ensemble cyclonique qui nous a surpris.
We visit Trinidad and Tobago.
But this is an impressive system of roots.
A vital breeding ground for the world's tiniest bird and largest turtle.
The eggs are really soft.
They're very soft and rubbery, yeah. So they can bounce off each other without bursting, without being destroyed.
Find out how residents and nature are coping with rising temperatures and the steps being taken to ensure this island paradise does not slip beneath the sea.
What would you say are the biggest climate challenges for Trinidad and Tobago?
I think we are still trying to work our way through the issues.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now.
Do people hunt ibis?
Sometimes they...
Why?
Long ago
Food.
for the feathers, now it's just for the fun of it and the exotic meat being acted.
Wow.
Let's go. Take my hand and hold it tight. I won't ever stop dreaming. Eyes closed, jump right in, we'll take a...
Port of Spain, a Caribbean business and manufacturing powerhouse, and a city with a fascinating history. The Trinidadian capital was used by native Indians more than 500 years ago as a canoe docking point. They call the area Cumucurapo, or place of the silk cotton trees. But Christopher Columbus and his fellow Spaniards brutally conquered Trinidad in 1490. They later gave Cumucurapo a new name, Puerto de los Españoles, or Port of the Spaniards. Today, few silk cotton trees remain in Port of Spain, and human development has forced wetlands and mangroves to the outskirts of the city. These habitats are among the most valuable ecosystems on the planet. They act as giant reservoirs, capable of holding large amounts of water, as well as helping to prevent floods and drought.
The mangroves are tropical coastal plants could adapt to any kind of situation. That's how they do. They're considered invasive, but I would say invasive in a good way because these mangroves store more carbon dioxide than terrestrial forests.
They're massive carbon sink.
Yes, so there's a good combat against global warming and climate change. We have 40 square miles of mangrove ecosystem here, considered to be one of the best in the Western Hemisphere. Species documented in the swamp was well over 85 species.
185 species?
Yeah, and Trinidad have close to 500 species, so that'll tell you in 40 square miles, seeing almost 200, that's very good, excellent. That's why a lot of people love coming in here and doing bird watching tours.
Oh, that's a snake. What kind of snake is this?
Scientifically known as Corallus Russianburger tree snake, or we know it as Cook's tree boa. But I've seen them well over 10 feet long already.
10 feet long.
Swamps are areas of land that are mostly underwater and often with an abundance of plant life. Because they harbour snakes and crocodiles and provide breeding grounds for mosquitoes, they were characterised as sinister habitats. But swamps are essentially forested wetlands that allow plants, trees and aquatic species to thrive.
Today, some of the biggest swamps are found along some of the world's largest rivers, like the Congo, the Amazon and the Mississippi. They're found almost everywhere really, like here, on the small island of Trinidad and Tobago, where they play an integral role.
Swamps provide nesting grounds for birds, shelter for amphibians and reptiles, and food sources for alligators and other predators. And they possess the properties to stave off the worst of climate change. Their soil continuously removes and stores carbon and acts as a natural buffer against rising CO2 levels.
Well, this is an impressive system of roots.
Each of these trees has hundreds of roots that prop it up and keep it stable no matter the tide. And quite often, when there's no one else around, there is an ecosystem that just depends on this to survive. What kinds of animals would you see here normally?
Oh, the swamp or the mangrove ecosystems, it support a lot of fish to begin with, because these roots act as nurseries. All right, so you're looking at the base of the tree first. Let's start with the roots. You have oysters on the trees, mussels, barnacles, worms, sponges, that live on the roots. Higher up, you'll get bats on the trees as well. We have proboscis, or Brazilian long-nosed bats. And even further up, you get the crabs. You have several species of crabs that live on the trees. You have the Aratus pisonii, or tree-climbing crabs. And you may see Goniopsis surrentata, or jumbie crab. It's a little red crab that eats on the parasites at the base of the trees. And as you climb higher and higher, you get silky anteaters and snakes. And then the crown of the trees, you get the birds roosting and nesting.
Why do you think the government doesn't seem to be interested in protecting the swamp?
Oh boy, I don't know. I've been
Well,
asking.
it has deemed some of these trees protected.
Forest mangroves are protected under the Forestry Act.
Okay.
All right.
So the government does see some value in this?
Yes, it is the area for the scalloped ibis. So in here is also a Ramsar site, and it's also the scalloped ibis is an environmentally sensitive species.
And that's the national bird?
That's the national bird, so they reside here. So some of the areas are protected. But let me say further, Trinidad have a lot of good laws in place. Enforcement is what they're lacking. Because up to now, we've not seen any patrols. They do have a good law. I worked on that policy building program to get the law changed from 1,000 to 100,000. It's now 100,000 if you get caught with an ibis. But still, you're not seeing no enforcement. Who's going to enforce the law? Who's looking at it to see who's hunting the ibis?
Do people hunt ibis?
Sometimes they...
Why?
Long ago
Food.
for the feathers, now it's just for the fun of it, and the exotic meat being
Wow.
aphrodisiac and all that crap that goes with that nonsense.
Combating poaching isn't Trinidad and Tobago's only challenge. The economy relies on oil and natural gas, which play a crucial role in its development. At its peak, in 1978, the Twin Island nation was exporting a staggering 230,000 barrels of oil a day. Today, though oil output has fallen to under 60,000 a day, the country remains committed to fossil fuels. But it's not come without environmental risks. In 1979, two fully loaded crude oil tankers collided, pouring more than 2 million barrels of oil into the Caribbean Sea. There were more than 850 oil spills between 2015 and 2023, according to the local Environmental Management Authority. And in February this year, a barge carrying 35,000 barrels of fuel leaked, polluting around 15 kilometers of Tobago's coastline and threatening mangrove swamps. At an energy conference in March, the Prime Minister Keith Rowley said his nation will continue to harness its resources.
The Caribbean energy economies, like Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana and Suriname, are significant players in this market and will not be irresponsible, nor will we shy away from beneficial opportunities.
And the Energy Minister, Stuart Young, admitted that leapfrogging to renewable energy won't be easy.
Decisions taken at COP28 are overly ambitious and do not take into account the increasing energy needs of a growing global population. For these developing countries, the challenge of putting in place ambitious climate change and decarbonization strategies is daunting. Small island developing states, along with African nations, continue to face exasperated debt pressures in pursuit of energy security.
But the government has committed to reduce methane emissions, adopt carbon capture technologies, and develop green hydrogen to reduce its footprint. And as developed nations are yet to honor their $100 billion a year pledge to a green fund, small island states like Trinidad and Tobago say they rely on cheap power and oil revenue.
Do you get a sense there is enough awareness among the residents of the island about the impacts of their actions on biodiversity, on general global warming?
A lot of information has gone out, but I believe in some instances it's still very much a they are responsible, not me responsible.
They meaning who?
Somebody else, the government, another community, and that nebulous and undefined they. And so projects like this serve to bring it home to persons so we understand what am I doing. So for example, one community is now looking at how are we disposing of our waste. yes, SWIMCOL, Solid Waste Management Company of Trinidad and Tobago, they will gather, they will come and collect the garbage bags. But where are you putting your garbage bag? Is it there in a place where stray dogs, stray cats, or even pets can come rip the bags apart? And then, of course, the SWIMCOL truck won't be collecting all of these scattered pieces. And therefore, when that happens, you are now contributing to the waste that will then be washed down in the next rain into the watercourse that we are protecting. So it's now reached to that level in the communities where they're on, after you've dealt with the big issues, they're now understanding, okay, what are the smaller things that we are doing or not doing that are hurting our environment?
Would you say the responsibility starts from the bottom up or from the top down? And I ask this because you mentioned these garbage trucks, which eventually take all this garbage to the waste site, which is basically buried / burned. You can see as you're passing the highway, there are mounds of plastic bags sticking out of the soil. Does the government care that this has a dire impact on the water table even?
So SWIMCOL is responsible. They're a responsible company. So the garbage is supposed to be bagged to make it easier for their workers to collect, compact, and take. And they are taken to landfills, managed landfills, so they're not burned. We have the problem sometimes at Beetham, but that generally would be persons burning just off site of the landfill. So they have been managing the waste collection and waste disposal. However, SWIMCOL has recognized that all of our landfills are close to end of life. And so they are now working, so they have been employing improved technologies to extend it a little bit beyond the normal capacity. They are now working on putting together or constructing a new landfill that will be now a secure landfill, better able to handle hazardous waste and industrial waste.
Let's talk about COSTAATT for a minute. Trinidad and Tobago is one of those small island states, small states period, that are not bound by the Paris Agreement to have particular goals that they must achieve. It's all voluntary, really. How do you use this information to propel your students to take this topic seriously?
Interesting question. So you are right. We are not signatories to all of the agreements. But what we try to do, so we have courses in our program where we introduce students to the international laws and policies. We understand what we're signatories to, which not, those sorts of things. And then we open the discussion with the students. You know, how should we approach these things? So we give a range of experiences and activities so that they come to grips, they massage and interrogate these issues properly so they understand then what can we also do for the areas where we think it is important, but we are not, as you said, legally bound or bound by these accords. What can we do in terms of our personal activism or NGOs or that sort of thing to make sure there's compliance, at least at the community level, even if we we have not signed on at the governmental level.
What is it about this program that drew you to it?
So first off, I've always had a love for nature. I like hikings and stuff. So when I was doing research and I came across environmental management, I felt as though it took that into consideration, not only nature, but some of the events that affect communities, such as flooding and disasters and some of these environmental issues. So I felt as though like some of my passion was being fulfilled by this program.
Talk about you going through nature on a hike. Are you seeing changes in these ecosystems that motivated you to do this degree?
Yes, certainly. For instance, in some areas, I saw erosion taking place, landslides. Also, some of the individuals that hike, when they carry things to eat, sometimes they discard of their waste within the river, or sometimes along the trail they would just drop it.
Many people come and they disrespect these areas very often. They leave plastic bottles, their old shoes, shirts, a lot of trash. And I, for the life of me, can't understand why people will want to come all this way into such a beautiful place and then leave their garbage behind. Look at behind me. Is that beautiful? Now look in front of me. Do you find this very beautiful? Why? Why do we need to bring all this up here and leave it here?
Why do you think people do that?
Sometimes lack of knowledge, not fully understanding the impact that it has on the environment. I think that some persons, they have somewhat of a don't care mentality. They just drop it
Those
along.
are two different things.
Yes.
Do they not know or do they not care? Which is it?
I think not know. I would say not know the impact that is being done to the environment.
And that ignorance is having a detrimental impact on one of the island's most fragile inhabitants. The hummingbird is the smallest bird on the planet. Known for its dazzling colors and speedy flight, they're found exclusively in the Western Hemisphere from southern Alaska to southern Chile. The tiny aeronauts rely on nectar from flowers. They also eat insects like fruit flies and gnats, and tree sap from holes drilled by other birds and insects. The hummingbird plays a vital role in our ecosystem, pollinating a wide array of plants, many of which rely solely on them. But the birds are sensitive to changes in the climate and rely on the preservation of its preferred ecosystem. But the birds are losing their habitats as global warming and wildfires raze forested areas. And changes in the distribution and abundance of nectar-producing plants force hummingbirds to migrate. But the challenges of shifting can be strenuous. According to the UN, these tiny creatures are one of the 70 bird species that's witnessed half of their population decline since 1970. Experts say if conservation efforts don't improve, they could all but disappear in the next 50 years. One man in TNT has opened a sanctuary for the birds, providing a sweet drink for these calorie-burning powerhouses always on the move. Describing the hummingbird as the smallest bird in the world kind of suggests that it's weak or very vulnerable. Is it when it comes to climate change?
Beautiful question. The smallest bird in the world, yes. But we don't talk about this side. Do you know the hummingbird is the most powerful of all living creatures on this planet?
Why do you say that?
It is. That's a reality. There are over 8,000 species of flowering plants that are dependent on the hummingbird for pollination. And a typical hummingbird can visit over 3,000 flowers in one day. There's a creature that plays a major role in the pollination of our flowering plants in the tropical regions of the Americas. But we don't talk about it the way we should. Hummingbirds burn more energy per unit of their body mass than any other living creature in the world, because they can consume and process calories faster than any other human being, any other living creature in the world.
Well, those calories have to come from somewhere. Flowers, which we know many flowers, plants have been dying out. How is this impacting the birds?
We have a rapidly exploding urban community. And our urban community is getting modern. doing, building modern homes. And what is a modern home? Home with a nice green lawn, green hedge, with asphalt paving, concrete. And these days we're falling in love with tiling, so beautiful tiles. But that means something had to go. The flower gardens have disappeared. When the flower gardens go, the food goes for the hummingbird. So I hear complaints all the time. We're not seeing hummingbirds around our homes. And the reason is very simple.
Are hummingbirds being pushed out or are they dying out?
I hesitate to use the word dying. I like to see them as retreating more into the forest.
Are you saying this because we love them and don't want to believe that they're dying out?
In a sense, yes. A lot of Trinidadians no longer know hummingbirds. It's not a little creature to see on a daily basis, as most of the older Trinidadians would have seen hummingbirds in the hibiscus hedges or on the exora plants and all of that. More and more people are turning up here who know very little about hummingbirds. I've not seen hummingbirds much.
The hummingbird is a powerhouse of a pollinator. What happens if they all die?
The hummingbirds keep the tropical rainforest buzzing and alive. And when the hummingbirds are threatened, our oxygen supply in the world is threatened. And we're not paying attention to the hummingbird. Nobody is talking about the importance of hummingbirds as pollinators except a few scientists here and there.
Does this anger you?
You sense I want to believe that I can manage this without being angry. But it disturbs me deeply. You see them zipping around. It's not because they're playing, It's that they are desperately looking for food.
It's interesting word you use, desperate. Do you think because of that desperation, does that make them more vulnerable, or do they have enough food here for them?
Hummingbirds are very old creatures, been evolving for over 50 million years. And they have survived for a long time, so they know how to find food. But with man's interference in the natural environment, we are destroying things that perhaps, and we don't always see the effects of what we are doing.
From the world's smallest bird to the heaviest non-crocodilian reptile, leatherbacks are the largest of all living sea turtles and another species in TNT under threat. 4 decades ago, there were 115,000 leatherbacks worldwide. Fast forward to today and there are less than 25,000. It's no surprise the leatherback is on a list of the world's top 6 species facing extinction.
The main culprits for this population decline, the fishing industry, whose long lines, gill nets, and trawls entangles leatherbacks. But here on this beach in East Trinidad, a small group of environmentalists are stepping in to help.
The community, once avid hunters of leatherbacks, have turned over a new leaf, protecting the animals instead.
They're an environmentally sensitive species. They have actually been around for over 200 million years. So they've dated back before dinosaurs, as far as we know. They're very prehistoric. They've changed a lot over time, but they've been around, and they're very much a valued resource to us, more so alive than dead or not here. At the formation, at the start of our journey, we were protecting sea turtles from poaching and slaughter. So that human interaction where persons would come onto the beaches and probably cut off pieces of flippers for meat and take her eggs for resale. They at that point in time didn't recognize that it was much of an ill because they were trying to sell this meat to put food on their tables for their children. But nature seekers, a group of community members at that time, they would have seen that as an opportunity to educate, to come out and stop those persons from slaughtering. I mean, at times it entailed a lot of physical fights and a lot of warding them off, but then it was necessary to protect them. Today, it's necessary because only one hatchling out of 1,000 survive when they make it out to sea.
It is a time-consuming process looking after such an elusive species. Nature seekers conduct overnight beach patrols with a keen eye for poachers and predators. Some nests are dug up and the eggs kept in boxes where they can hatch safely. It's a system that significantly improves the odds for the leatherback, with many hatchlings returning to this very beach in Trinidad and Tobago when they mature.